Welcome to the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders at B2B services, tech, and SaaS companies to learn the systems and processes they've used to create success for their business. We'll also learn from marketing and sales experts to provide insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and the podcast is brought to you by Modern Revenue Strategies and their 10x ROI B2B Growth Guarantee. Schedule a free diagnostic call to learn the fastest path to double your B2B revenues in just 90 days. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and today I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Richard Blank. Now, I'm going to read his bio to make sure I get it right. Richard is the Chief Executive Officer for Costa Rica's Call Center since 2008. He holds a bachelor's degree in communication and Spanish from the University of Arizona and a certificate of language proficiency from the University of Sevilla, Spain. When he was just 27, he relocated to Costa Rica to train over 5,000 employees for one of the biggest call centers in San Jose. He uses a mix of motivational public speaking style backed with tactful and appropriate rhetoric. Richard shares his knowledge and has trained over 10,000 bilingual telemarketers. So he's a keynote speaker for Philadelphia's Abington High School 68th National Honor Society induction ceremony. He's a big believer in giving back to Abington Senior High School, and it's very important. He actually endows a scholarship each year for students that plan on majoring in world language at the university level. So, Richard, thanks so much for joining me today.
Mark, so happy to be with you and your amazing audience. This is going to be great.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to get into some of the topics that we were chatting about before. But before we dive into sort of these strategic ways to lead sales conversations and some of those really amazing strategies and tactics that you use, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get here?
Long shot. The odds. Oof. I was a Spanish major at the University of Arizona. Had to convince my parents not to study law or medicine, but it paid off. It was a luxury. And I did some dedicated practice. I did above and beyond what school expected me to do or what my friends thought could be even possible. And plus, by going to school in Tucson, Arizona, there were so many people around that I could practice with. So I was getting that sort of reinforcement, building all momentum, building that strength. And so when I was given that 1 in a million opportunity to move to Costa Rica, sure, I was green and wet behind the ears, but I also had a couple skills. And I knew that was enough to get me at least anchored here, comfortable, acclimated, and then I could make my plan. And here we are 24 years later. I'm happily married, got a business, and I'm on your podcast. I'll be telling some really good stories today on the sort of tips and tricks that got me to be successful.
Super exciting. So tell us really what Costa Rica's call center does. What exactly do you guys do?
We're a dedicated nearshore bilingual call center that deals with sales, lead generation, appointment setting, customer service, back office support, non-voice support, IT support. We can do all these things. And our agents are highly skilled. They have the most neutral English accent in Central America. Costa Rica's got the best infrastructure.
Yeah.
Companies such as Amazon, HP, Intel, Oracle are here. So think about the competition in the labor pool.
Yeah.
Our proxemics to the United States, so you guys can hop on a quick flight. We're on mountain time zone. It's very easy in regards to our scheduling. And as I say, English, everyone's picking it up, speaking it well. And I tell you what, between me and you, anybody that speaks multiple languages does bear the mark of higher education. It shows structure and discipline and cognitive skills. And you say, but what happens if they have an accent? Yeah, but look at Ricardo Montalban on Fantasy Island. He was the man. And when I speak Spanish, I got a Philly accent. So at least people give me a double take. What are you going to do? But I tell you what, it really makes the world brighter and opens it up. And I knew that at least that, to me, would have given me longevity or any sort of flexibility when I decided to make big decisions.
So I know that you do more than just, have people smiling and dialing, because you've spent a lot of time sort of learning about some of these sort of strategic structures to sales conversations that can be more impactful. So I'm curious if you can share some of those, with our audience, some ways that, as they think about, as they make calls maybe to prospects or even to clients where they need to have a persuasive conversation with someone, whether that persuasion is, hey, that this proposal that we have is really good and you should do it, or hey, this work that we've delivered is really good and you should buy more of it. Talk to us about some of the ways that you approach those types of conversations as you train your teams.
That's an excellent question. We do have the luxury of technology, so we record all of our calls and have a dedicated department to check the quality assurance and their key performance indicators. That's what I'm paying you to do. I want the soft skills, because anybody can carpet bomb a list.
Right.
Any supervisor can give you a script and all the rebuttals on what to say. But I tell you what, if you don't land the intro, the body and conclusion don't even exist. You might get 30 seconds if you're lucky. It's like a cat with a mouse. But if you're good, you can buy time and get checkpoints. Where a 10-minute conversation, my friend, is 20, 30-second conversations, if you look at it that way. Easier to carry, less weight, much more control, easier adjustments. But let's get to at least some simple strategies, because we don't have all day to give all of my secrets out. The first thing I was mentioning were soft skills. The best thing you can do is readjust your vocabulary. Since English is their second language, I do emphasize the thesaurus so they can have similes. I consider it powering up words or avoiding rabbit hole words, because certain things may evoke an emotion. Mark, I would never say, how may I help you? But I said may, yeah, but you used the word help. Mark's a strong man, he's capable. I'd rather say, Mark, my buddy, how may I assist you? But when Mark gets better at the process, it's, Mark, how may I guide you? And then when he's finalizing the project, it's, Mark, how may I lend a hand to put this ball in the end zone? So you got to choose which stage you're using the positive word. And then it's never excuse me as a defensive word. This is the time where you fall on the sword. You sacrifice the pawn. You would say, hey, Mark, for my clarification, was it A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3? Inadvertently and passive aggressively, Mark knows that his dog is barking and his cell phone is terrible and his kid is crying. I can't hear you. So I'm just trying to show you in an extremely polite way that you might need to put your doggy outside. So Mark does put his dog outside and comes back. And then I say, hey, Mark, what's the name of your puppy? He goes, his name is Champ. Yeah, what sort of breed is it? It's a German Shepherd. That's great. And so when you ask that second or third follow-up question, that really shows interest. You're not glancing. So you're anchoring. This is roots. You're getting depth. You're going vertical now instead of horizontal. See, here's the thing about the salespeople. They think A to Z is how you get the call. How do you know? You might stop at B and build a skyscraper. I always focus on verticals. I focus on open-ended questions. I'll get to C, D, and E. We're on B right now. This is working out great. This is where I'm making camp for a while. We might hang out at this club. We're having fun. And I might be able to see that this is the greatest way to start this relationship, because it might take more time for the other things. And so what a beautiful pace. We got to learn how we're going to give this back and forth with people. And so when you overextend and when you press, it's when it becomes ugly. So when we make these calls, and I was mentioning more prior to going live, I love giving positive escalations, regardless of how you're doing your delivery and rhetoric. And we can get to that structure later. Please compliment the gatekeeper. Let them know they're doing great. And when you speak to the decision maker, you will say it verbally and do it in writing. So when you call back, it's the Richard Circle. You'll get the hero's welcome from Judy, and she'll let me know that in 5 years, no one's ever said that before. And when you speak to the owner of the company, you're showing good faith prior to any sort of contracts. So imagine when we do start working together, the sort of things we've done, just don't do it afterwards. That's not cool. And you don't give a little piece of food on a toothpick. You give a full slice of pizza. If you're going to try it out, if we're going to dance, we're not going to get married, but if it's a 5-minute dance, it's going to be a good dance. And you're going to meet the real Richard in 5. It's enough to at least give me a follow-up call, at least a consideration. And let's say by default that we're not able to work together, I love the Richard. I'm so glad that you called. I know you're a lobster guy, but we're only steak. But if I ever order lobster, I promise I will call you back. But it was wonderful meeting you and wishing you well on my journey as they are on theirs. It's like ships in the night. And so that sort of positive reinforcement is a beautiful romantic death where you can jump another cloud. And so you must think of this industry in the art of speech, because when most people say, I don't want to make phone calls or I don't like public speaking, things they fear more than death. Well, what happens to the 1 or 2% that do it? Fortune favors the brave. Then you get all the riches and treasure. What are you afraid of? Making a new friend? Why? Because the waters are tainted from all the bad people that did it prior? That's fine. It's very easy to get around that. If you can land the introduction immediately and say the name of the company or the name of the person prior to your own introduction, better than they do, you're going to drop their defenses. It's a positive reinforcement where they're going to ask your name. They're not going to say, is this a sales call? Take me off your list. Why are you calling? Hang up, or even an FU. Ooh, those hurt. But if they ask my name and I say, hey, that's a great question. My name is Richard Blank, and I double dip and they ask, who is Richard Blank? I get to say the name of my company and then play my odds and hopefully do the positive escalation after the pass the pitch. And if you can do that 200, 300, 400 times a day as a telemarketer, or if you have a real cherry list and you do due diligence prior to the phone call, there's 1,000 ways you can anchor in regards to a custom-made voicemail or custom-made email, or even learning a little bit more about a company culture and seeing photographs of what they put online. So you see their beautiful loading dock next to a lake. So when you speak to Mr. Jones, you did that. You're just not calling him sir and trying to lock an appointment at Thursday at 2. Because I receive these calls and I size up and I give people credit for their vigor and their courage to do it. But my goodness gracious, at least bite the apple when juggling. Show me something new. Teach me something. And I'm willing to balance your bike. I can pay it forward. I can say, hey, Billy, you did a great job. May I make a couple suggestions? But you see my passion. Also, I'm in a weird industry. And if you don't have fidelity for what you do, you shouldn't be doing it. At least with me, I have a luxury trade. I compete against AI, which in my opinion is gathering. And we should do the last 10%, those last 10 yards for the end zone. That's the empathy. The one thing AI will never be able to do is to duplicate human empathy. And the uncanny valley will freak you out. The more they get like humans, is sometimes we might go away. But I tell you what, don't tell me how I feel. You never owned a puppy and it never ran away. So those are the sort of things I don't think will ever fly. So they will always need individuals like us, Mark, in order to hold some hands for retention, upsells, referrals, or even an exit interview. We will always have that place in regards to the market.
So you mentioned something a minute ago that you and I have talked about, and I want to make sure that our audience gets it because I think it's such a clever thing. And you talked about, when you call someone and they say, hello, and they answer their name instead of saying, hi, this is Richard. Can I speak to Jim? You have an interesting trick that you do there that kind of changes the dynamic and, in neurolinguistic programming, they call it like breaking the frame. It's sort of like, breaks the inner, like, let's sort of role play that a little bit because I really want to make sure our audience gets it because I think it's so insightful.
Very simple. You get your first impression. I could say, good morning, is Mark there or whatever. I get one breath. I'd rather say B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. How are you today?
Okay. So
why am I doing
back to them?
Right. Multiple reasons. If I am anonymous for the whole phone call, you're shady.
Sure.
Don't do that. But I'm allowed to say with trumpets, a red carpet, and chest out the name of the company better than the person who answered your call. I said it better than you. Come on. You're playing wiffle ball. This is hardball. This is serious. You're representing this company. And so it's almost like mystery shopping. And as I mentioned before, if I'm doing the good mornings or asking to speak to Mark or who's in charge, you sound like a telemarketer. They're black and blue from that.
Right.
But I was mentioning earlier, we're good, thanks. Take me off your list. Don't call again. But I get the, who is this, Mr. Sunshine?
Right.
And if they say their name is Judy, I'm like, hey, Judy, my name is Richard Blank. And then I get the double dip. I sound non-threatening again. Who
Yeah.
is Richard Blank and which company do you represent? And I would let her know that I'm so glad that you asked. And the name of my company is Costa Rica's Call Center. And I'll play those odds. Why? Because they're out of the trance. I don't sound like a telemarketer. I'm not asking for anything yet. I haven't compromised ethics, values, and morals. And don't tell me I stole time. I said the name of the company better than you. You asked
Sure.
my name. I didn't give the name of my company yet because I wanted to double dip it to see if I sounded nice a second time. And
Sure.
I did. And then I'll let Judy know how great she was. And when you transfer me to Mark, I'm going to let him know. And then she gets all excited, transfers me to you, and you go, hi, this is Mark. Hey, Mark, I got to let you know how amazing Judy is. You don't even know who I am yet. So your defect goes from like a 10 to a 1, and I take your 9 and I put it forward. I got
Sure.
a nice bounce out of that. I'm your buddy already. I complimented your favorite person in the whole company. Because out of 1,000 people, how many people tell you how amazing Judy is?
Right. Yeah.
Me.
Definitely
So what
changes
do I
the whole
do? That's
dynamic.
how we get these passes to pitch because I'm starting off in the first 30 seconds to a minute strong. The rest are odds, and you got to train on that. Those are other classes. But
Sure.
most of your calls are romantic deaths. So if
Yeah.
anything and nothing, just don't say goodbye and hang up with the tail between your legs. Tell Judy have a great day. At least say the name of her company a couple times. You get to practice muscle memory and different ways to say names. That's just nice. It's what got me through the desert. Man, I made so many calls and I used to have to manual dial. So I would say when I was calling for FISBOs and cancels and expireds, I would say the name of their street, 123 Main Street. How are you today? I had to. I had to. And it was the only way for me to keep saying, but it worked. It bought me time. That's all.
So you also talked a minute ago, and I want to sort of double click into that of that you think that AI, sort of serves a role in companies, and we certainly see, for a lot of the marketing and sales solutions that we're building, there's lots of ways to leverage it. Do you have a real specific, sort of framework of using it up to a certain level, but then humans take it that last mile? Talk to us a little bit about that and where you see where AI can really add value, and versus what's really necessary for that sort of human touch.
The first 20% and the last 20%.
Okay.
You need to get that thing to take off. Then it could go on autopilot, and then you need someone to land it. I wouldn't trust AI to take off or land a plane, but they can fly the 9 hours. That's fine.
Gotcha.
Even serve the food.
Right.
That's the delicate touch. And if you want to maybe get double opted in data, and I don't like robo calling, but there are certain people that do call into certain companies
Uh-huh.
and will fill out forms or do something online, omni-channel non-voice like chat, email,
Right.
texting support. I don't like putting things over the phone. I don't think it's the voice recognition is good enough. They don't give you enough options, and then they hang up on you after you failed 3 times to say, I need to speak to someone.
That's right.
That you could lose a client. So you should, as I mentioned, 20 and 20, that's the breaking point of the frustration of either the program you want me to fill out is not working good enough. A sense of urgency because my tire is flat,
Right.
or I'm about to either join your company, leave your company, or what to do because it's intense.
Yeah.
Money's exchanged, time's happening. And so you got to get that stage of someone to jump in real quick and just say, is everything doing okay with the robot? Everything's fine, but I got a question about this thing. It came 2 days late. Not a problem. Those are the credit on the account. Oh, your email says it's a 3. It's an 8. It's an 8. Great. Just wanted to make sure. I tried
Right.
it 5 times. That's why I'm here. Maybe you should have a default. Keep pressing the same button. Supervisor should be popping in just to see if you're okay.
Yeah.
Because you're not okay.
Right.
It's not working. And I'm starting to curse. And I'm not cursing this way. I'm cursing this way because I'm frustrated. And I've taught my agents when people let off steam, as long as it's not at you, if they do, they get a warning second, they get hung up. But if they curse that hard because they are so frustrated, then you can use some guilt on them and go, Mark, are you done cursing? Yes, Richard, are you sure? You can do one more FU if you want. And then they go, no, I'm ready to move forward. And then what does that do? Then you can put your rebuttals away. It's more clarification questions, not rebuttals to get that appointment or convert the call. All you're doing is readjusting the tones, and you're just doing it at different levels, Mark. Because if I try to force a fit or teach these freshmen to do Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, cold call closing, it's just not going to happen. They're going to get eaten up. But there is some finesse and charm, and you can be clever without compromise. And if you can do on our end this personal touch of lead generation, appointment setting, hot lead transfer, it's a wonderful thing. I think it's having a renaissance again. I think people like to have a good phone call compared to just email or texting, spamming. It's almost like someone painting for you or a home cooked meal. You see the effort now compared to just your name being in an email blast.
Right.
Maybe through humanity, because we're so isolated and so numb from all of this stuff that's just not really interpersonal. They might like that. It's almost like the olden days when you haven't seen someone for like 5 days. You see someone in the distance on the path, you're definitely going to break bread with them and ask how their travels are going. You miss people. And so maybe we're that kind of person. They're on a deserted island and we can actually share. Not for 5 minutes. They don't have the time. But just in a break of the day, just let them know that they're alive and that I'm alive. And if it's one dance, so be it. But it's going to be very pleasant. And we're going to see if we can at least shuffle some cards and see by blending, is it good enough to at least just see if we can follow up with either information, time, or a sale? And that's how you build a healthy pipeline, Mark, if you're interested in telemarketing and prospecting.
Interesting. So I have to comment. I see behind you, you've got your jukebox there, and then also a game. I know you're actually a big collector of games, but I also know that you work gamification into sort of how you run your business. Talk to us a little bit about that, and sort of how you've seen that work and be successful.
The worst is a sterile environment. Bad coffee, uncomfortable furniture, bad magazines, bad air. It's terrible. I knew growing up that I believe in nurture. And I always got excited for bay windows and vaulted ceilings and things where, as a kid, you think you could do in a trampoline inside or throw footballs.
Right.
You made your best friends during recess. Why? You let off steam, recharged batteries. You got a chance to talk to people and hang out with people. And I've seen, especially today, that a lot of people, 4 could be at a table, but each one of them is on a phone, or someone is isolated in the corner, or they're having cigarettes outside.
Right.
And so I had the room. Arcades are going out of business. I'm a Generation Xer. And things that were unattainable as a child and were very expensive, I'm buying for pennies on the dollar and fixing. Currently I have 13 machines. Wow. Yeah, I'm a collector of classic pinball machines. And so I got a bunch at home. I got a few here. And it gives them a chance to meet people from other departments, hang out with me. And when you see somebody laughing and giggling, you see a different side of them. Yeah. And that's when people can bond even more and make friends. And so it worked for me, because the worst thing you could do is just have a place where people feel like a slave.
Sure.
They're not recharging or getting the most out of their time. At least they're never going to get to play a 1970 Bally's Camelot pinball machine. Microelectrical, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And so it gives them a chance really to experience a little bit of life compared to what they were doing virtually. And so it's a nice way for them not to be afraid of me.
I love it.
If that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah. And sort of creating that personality. So often in B2B, we build so much of our argument or our pitch or our presentation on the logic behind what it is that we're selling. And we forget that even though people, are on the other end of the decision, people are kind of emotional animals. And the emotion of the sort of decision maker is as important as the logic of your pitch. And in fact, most of the time, people make decisions based on emotion, and then they justify why they made that decision by cherry picking out some logical argument. So it's so interesting that you use sort of that emotional connection that you can make with people around things like that to sort of really bring your business forward.
You have to be careful because if it's inauthentic, you're gonna get caught.
Yeah, that's true.
Stop calling someone champ unless you really know the numbers of why they're number one. And so as long as you can back up that compliment, or if you talk about someone's company, but you did some due diligence, like use me for an example. Let's say you were prospecting me for me to change my telecom service or to buy some furniture for the call center. You said, hey, Richard, I checked you out online. You got the greatest collection of pinball machines. I would say, all right, Mark, you got 5 minutes.
That's right. That's right.
Credit card not at the ready, but I'm giving you a chance to go A to Z, 1 to 3. I will definitely ask you questions. Why? Well, you buttered my muffin.
Sure.
But secondly, you showed just an additional effort. You just didn't do the sir and go into the pitch. I don't know. You didn't have me tattooed on your forehead, but anyone that shows additional dedicated practice effort to really learn something about someone. And for me, it's very difficult, and I respect you and your podcast. You have some extremely intelligent guests here that are extremely technical savvy. That's why I hire IT. I got a CTO. But when I can relate to somebody's university studies, or maybe if they traveled the world or something, athletics, or anything that I have in common that is outside of work, where I can somehow anchor so I don't have to compete for the chum in the water with the extra sharks to outwit one another.
Yeah.
Why? Because any other pinball collector or aficionado that I've met in this world, because people that travel the world that collect and have events in Europe, they look me up and they come here and they get a hero's welcome. And it's one of those things where we love something so much, we have that in common. It's like a brotherhood.
Yeah.
And so I look for the same thing to see if I can have that true connection, because you hear my passion with pinball. We haven't even spoken about half the things. When they hear that, you can crush 99 other phone calls that they have. I might be beat on price, but they're not going to beat me on the merit in regards to this authenticity on really who I am.
Yeah.
I tell you what is as well, running a business, you cannot give your clients surprises. Things happen in my industry. There's large attrition. It's usually natural, but it does happen.
Yeah.
But as long as I have a solution and I get in touch with you, I've seen that clients respect that sort of ability to be candid and have a plan and be calm under pressure, because that's during tough times. Good times were, champagne and having the best time ever. But during tough times, I'm stable, I'm steady, I'm realistic. But I also never cut my nose to spite my own face. Why would I give someone a walk of shame? Why would I embarrass them in front of others? People talk, and I'm a guest here. And so some of the advice in order to grow companies or to break that bottleneck of where you're at, it's the fidelity. It's the people that give you that foundation to put another level or two of your building up. You need strong columns.
Yeah.
You also need good workers not to muck it up, so you don't need to do it second time.
Yeah.
Selective of who you promote. You may want to bring in specialists if it's technical. But in my opinion, you need to promote the guy on the floor that everybody loves, that did it, not because he's kissing my butt or doing something else to gain favors. He's number one on the board. He's consistent coming to work. He does his calls. He punches in on time. You could ask the whole floor. They're going to know that he's the ace. But he's only 19, even better. It's like a squire to a knight. Then you can mold them. They don't have bad habits. And so as long as you keep that sort of open mind, my friend, then people will be able to delegate and expand their companies. And I tell you what, these people are making the calls too. They're going to come with suggestions. They might not know how to put it together, but if they're seeing a certain list, a rebuttal, or a tone is not getting the sort of distance that we're used to, Then we go back and we look at certain things to see if we eliminated, adjusted, or even speak to the client and ask them, is this necessary, or is there any other way that I can present this? Because that's how you master these lists. It's a lot of tweaking.
Yeah.
But once you have it, man, that engine just produces golden eggs. It's incredible.
So obviously you've got a wealth of knowledge around persuasive communication and tons of great stories, but unfortunately we don't have all day to talk about it. But why don't you tell us something that's on the horizon for Costa Rica's call center that you're excited about?
Oh, it's interesting. I like to talk about things outside the office that are still related.
Sure.
I will be producing a 30-second commercial for this company that's going to be including a rap and this new style of like freestyle dancing. I got a kid that is just one of the best in the country that works here, and I got a guy that is like a professional rapper. So we're going to put together a video next Sunday, and hopefully that's going to look pretty cool. But why did I do this? Because prior to that, I was also a sponsor for a local band called Igni Faroki. They've been around since '78. And, Faroki's one of my best friends. But I said, hey, man, I want to do a rock video at this call center. Why don't you write a song about me making phone calls and falling in love with my wife and not wanting to move back to Philly? He goes, okay. So we wrote a song. Next thing you know, my favorite band is In Excess. And I was listening to a podcast interview with Gary Beers, the bassist, and he was mentioning this company that he has, GGB Basses.
Okay.
I looked him up, and one of the sections said, hire Gary. I'm like, if you have a song, I'll play on it for you. I'm like, no way. Yeah, I do have a song. And so I wrote him, I said, listen, would you like to play an overlay bass on the song that I produced here in Costa Rica? And he wrote me back, goes, I like it. It sounds like this band Rainbow. Let's do this. And I decided to hire all of his options. I wanted him to not only play a couple different versions of it, but add some synthesizer and other sort of sounds and do a performance video. I wanted the whole package. And so we created a very cool, he didn't fly to Costa Rica, he did this in his LA studio, but I was able to mix the two and do a really cool rock video on the side. And so I'm just supporting the local arts and just having the best time doing it. And so what a fantasy that was. So you might see some interesting videos coming out from this call center in the next year.
That's awesome. So Richard, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. For our audience that's listening and has loved hearing what you had to say and maybe has a need for sort of nearshore call center services, how can they get in touch with you?
First, they need to buy a ticket and fly down to beautiful Central America when it gets way too cold back home. That's if you want, shoot me an email, CEO@CostaRicasCallCenter.com. Let me know Mark sent you. And if you do, I'll be more than happy to review your script and give you the hookup and just see what we can do to start producing more business. But I can't thank you enough. I had the best time being a guest on your podcast today.
Well, thank you, Richard. I really enjoyed our conversation and the chance to chat. So talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you for joining this episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. We hope you've gained insights to grow your business. If you enjoyed this discussion, please rate, comment, like on your favorite platform, and share to others who will find it useful. Do you know a CEO, founder, or leader at an early stage B2B services, tech, or SaaS company who would like to be a guest and share their story? Send us a note. Let's schedule a conversation.